Um, so tonight we are going to hear from 4 of the printmakers who are involved in the hot type print portfolio. Carol Fitzsimons unfortunately could not be here tonight to answer questions, but we will be seeing a video of Carol talking about her work. Then we'll see a video of Lisa, and you'll be able to ask questions of Lisa Goddard. Then we'll be seeing David Whitbeck on video, and you can ask questions of David. And then we'll be seeing Betsy Zimmerman, and you can ask questions of Betsy. First, I will show you, just so that you can see it if you haven't already, this this is the website for the hot type portfolio. So if you haven't had a chance yet to explore the website for the portfolio, I hope you will. You can see all the work here, and there's some nice resources to go along with this great project. And it's just hot-type.org. And then the other important thing is to go and bid on the portfolio that's available at 32auctions.com/hot type. So this is what that looks like. So you can go there, and there's just one item to bid on. There's only one portfolio that's up for auction, and it's portfolio number 2 of 28. We're starting the bidding at $500, and this auction will remain up until the last day of the show, which is July 16th. So do go on and bid if you're interested in taking home the entire portfolio. And I have to say, I mean, I think that's an incredibly, incredibly reasonable starting bid. So do go bid early and bid often. And then this is the hot type website. So first, what we're going to do is we will be sharing Carol's video, then we will share Lisa's video, and then we'll take a break, and you can ask your questions of Lisa during that break period. So if you have questions for Lisa, type them into the chat as you're watching the video, and then I'll go through those questions with Lisa during the break. That way it's not, 45 minutes of video altogether for you all. And then after that, we'll watch David and Betsy, and then we'll do questions again. So the hot type portfolio is up now. It's on view in Dodge House Gallery at the Art Club, and it's on view through July 16th. Like I said, our gallery hours are Sundays through Fridays, 12 to 4 p.m. And we will be there this Sunday, June 27th from 2 to 4 p.m. Doing a reception. If you can imagine that, things are getting back to normal. So we'll be doing a reception this weekend. So first, let me just open my first video here. Well, actually, hold on one second. I actually have to open it on, I saved them to my desktop, but I have to open it on Google apparently. So hold on just one second.
idea. First I was thinking I would do sticks and stones, can break your bones, but words will never hurt me. And I was thinking of doing the sticks and the stones and putting the words. And then the more I thought about it, especially with Trump right now and the political things going on, I feel like a lot of us are, and it's been through history too, that if you see no evil, speak no evil, or hear no evil, that means it isn't out there, but it is. And so that gave me the idea to somehow or other do some images for that. And the first thing I did is I started playing on the computer with different type styles. And I found, again too, I'm known for my drawing, but I wanted to do something different. So I went and I found images, historical images and things that I took pieces of it, and then I distorted it on the computer. So I started with this little bit of lip from, I'm going to say a picture of a bathing beauty from way back when, an engraving, and I started stretching it out on the computer in Photoshop, and I sort of pulled all this together. I did think I was going to have an ear, so I did draw an ear. But then I decided I didn't like the ear in the form. So I just started playing on the computer with different images and putting them together and trying different things. I'm eventually going to sew the lips shut because I think too that if we would just speak up, maybe not as much bad in the world would happen. So this is how I built the image for just playing on the computer. And then I played with, first I thought I loved that, and then I started, this is changing the letters, because it's no, 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 no. We need to say no. And so I really wanted to have more no's in there. So this is a sample of the print, and I'm going to what's called chine-collé in printmaking. So I've glued up the back, and I'm gonna, using this template, which is this way, I'm going to glue this onto white paper. And I marked the back of the paper with an arrow, and the grain of the paper, because my grain of my rice paper is this way, so I need to make sure that when I run it through the press and glue it together, I get the grains going in the same direction. So the grain of the paper is going this direction, so when I try and fold it back, it fights me. It's harder, whereas parallel, it's just really easy. So that's how I find the grain. And so I'm gonna have about 30 prints by the time I'm done. I wanted to have a couple of extra. And so I tore all of my heavier print paper. This is Pesha, and it's very, very white, so that the rice paper that I have, I'm gonna get a different color. And so I'll have the beautiful imprint of the plate mark when I run it through the press for the chine-collé. And then after that, I'm hoping, or I'm planning to play with sewing the lips shut. I haven't decided yet exactly how I'm going to do it. I thought I was going to use red thread, but now I've decided I'm going to use yellow. And I may, I'm thinking about seeing if I can't cut strips of the yellow plastic caution tape and use that to sew the lips together, because I think that the saying is really much a cautionary tale.
So that was Carol's video. And like I said, Carol is unfortunately not able to be here tonight. So if you have questions for Carol, you can write down your questions or email them to me, and I can connect you with Carol at a later time to ask your questions. But Carol, I'm sure, is always happy to talk about her work and about printmaking, and she's such a great printmaking teacher. So next we're going to watch the video featuring Lisa Goddard. And then if you have questions for Lisa, do put them in the chat because Lisa is here and will be available to answer questions. And then if you are feeling shy or you don't have questions yet, you can put them in a little later, and we'll do questions with all the artists at the end as well. So if you think of something afterwards for Lisa, that's fine too. So we'll share that one now. And I will also say that all of the videos that we're watching were put together by Ruth Clegg. So thank you to Ruth for putting together these great videos about this project and interviewing these artists and assembling all of this for us for tonight.
I started out with a concept, and this was my concept print drawing, just a very loose idea based on the nursery rhyme of Humpty Dumpty. And I wanted to do Humpty Trumpty sat on his wall. Humpty Trumpty had a great fall, thank goodness. All of his money and all of his men couldn't put Trumpty together again. So that was my idea. It was very ambitious for me because I haven't done solar prints much, photopolymer prints, I should say. I am more of a woodcut artist, and I wanted to combine the two. So right there, I was setting myself up for a huge challenge because, among other things, this is the depth of a photopolymer plate. It's maybe a 1/32 of an inch. And this is the depth of my woodcut plate. So I had to wrestle with the challenge of, okay, if I'm doing this in registration, how am I going to do it? And I finally realized that as I was printing, I had to always have a plate of wood and a photopolymer plate. And when I was producing the photopolymer, it would stay on top and the wood would be underneath. And when I was producing the wood, I would put the photopolymer plate down below and then the wood on top. So that part worked well. What I'm playing with here is my registration jig, which I should have taken more time to set up because in the end it did create some loose registration, which didn't help me. Anyway, it did work. I ended up with a finished print that looks like this. The image was printed on Japanese paper, which is very thin, and then sheen collated to this harder paper. That was a learning curve for me too, because I hadn't done sheen collé, and it's more challenging than one might think. I have great respect for Carol Fitzsimons, who does it regularly, who is so talented at putting things in absolutely perfectly. But this was challenging. So the whole process was challenging, not the least of which was that the concept for me was born out of tremendous frustration and dismay, dislike, what you see here is photopolymer plates that are picking up different areas of the image. And one woodcut plate that creates the background and foreground. So the woodcut marks in the sky and the woodcut marks in the foreground come from this plate. All the rest of them come from photopolymer plates. The last to print, obviously, is the text plate that goes over everything. It was a challenge. The way you create the photopolymer plates is that you take your image and you print it on, actually turn it this way for you. You print it on a acetate sheet and you expose your photopolymer plate like this. I did it in the sun so that it hardens the plate where there is no black, makes it permanent. Where it's black, the sun doesn't have a chance to touch the plate, and so the plate is still soft. And after you've exposed it for the amount of time, you wash it out in a water bath with a soft brush. You go over it and it washes out the area that is black, hence creating that etched line or the aquatint tone down into the plate. Then you ink your plate and you start printing. And in my case, I started with 50 sheets of Japanese paper to get a final edition of 28. And I just made it by the skin of my teeth. So that is one of the challenges of doing a large edition like this, because not every plate and every image is going to print exactly right. The print itself is printed on a Japanese paper called Mitsumata. I spoke with the Paper Connection to get paper that was very strong, even though it is so delicate, because I was going to be running it through the press 6 times when you include the shinkolei, the process at the end. So this is a print that wasn't perfect. I went ahead and glued it up anyway with the shinkolei process. And for that, you lay it on a piece of wax paper and you glue from the inside of the print out like this all the way around. I let that dry and then did a second glue up. And then I trimmed it down to this size because originally it was a bigger piece of paper so that I could have the edges be precise, and then they would fit into the 11 by 11 backing paper, which is Stonehenge. Shinkolei, I've learned, is very challenging, and my hat is off to those who do it well. This is the Stonehenge, again, with this Japanese paper glued into it. And one of the difficulties, the reason I did not include this one in the edition, is you can see it buckled, which meant that I had the grain of the paper going one way for the Mitsumata and going the other way for the Stonehenge, and that causes it to buckle. So this did not make the cut. All the others, I had the grain going the right way, but somehow this one escaped me. Anyway, it's an interesting process, lots of possibilities, and it is, the technique itself is a challenge.
So if anyone has questions for Lisa, you can put them in the chat now and I'll read them. or I can ask a couple questions of my own. So Lisa, I'm asking you to unmute, so you can unmute yourself.
I'm muted. Hi, everybody.
Hi, Lisa. One question that I had is, why did you choose to go with this new process that you hadn't tried before with polymer and stuff? What was the motivation for you to try something totally new during this project?
I don't think I thought it through. I was trying to combine text with the imagery, and it seemed like a good idea at the time. But it probably would be better for me when I have to do a big edition like this to stick with something I know, not something that's new.
That's a good answer. I like it. That's a very honest answer. Good for you, Lisa. Had you ever done text before in a woodblock print?
No.
No. Yeah. And when you, is it normal for you to start out with that many sheets in order to get an edition that's like half the amount that you started out with, or is that partially because of the polymer process?
I think typically with my woodcuts, I do a couple of extra sheets of paper to allow for some misregistrated pieces that I won't include in an edition. But I'm pretty good at registering those. So because I was doing different plates of different thicknesses, you know, there were challenges there. And I think it's always safer to do more than less. Yeah. But I just made it by the skin of my teeth, as I said.
And then my other question was, what sort of resources did you use to teach yourself about the polymer process?
Well, my great friend and mentor and colleague, Carol Fitzsimons, is a wealth of information. And so she provided me with a lot of information. And then before I did the Sheen Collé glue up, for instance, I experimented with it using prints that hadn't worked out, so that helped me remember, for instance, that I had to have the grain of both papers go the right way. So, you know, it's good to have enough to play with to make sure you've got the technique down.
That's great. And do you see yourself using polymer at all going forward, or do you think that this is the first and last time you're going to experiment with it?
No, I'd like to experiment more with it. I've invested in more, and I have an upcoming printmaking project where I will use some polymer combined with woodcuts, but I have a little more knowledge now, so hopefully it'll be smoother.
Great. And I think my last question for this little section will be, what was the most enjoyable part of the project for you?
Well, I really enjoyed thinking about the idea and working out how I was going to do it. And then I really loved it when I was done. And I gave Carol the completed edition. That was a great joy.
Getting it out of the studio is the best part. Yeah. And Caroline Goddard said, love this video. Love that this video is now a great resource in itself for other artists trying to learn the polymer technique. Lots of great information here. And that is true, absolutely. So thank you, Lisa. If anybody has questions for Lisa that come to mind during the next set of videos, you can just keep putting questions in the chat, even if they're not for, you know, David or Betsy or whatever. We'll do more questions at the end for everyone. We just wanted to do a little bit of a break with questions in between videos. So now I'm going to share the video featuring David.
Abecedarian handbook, an alphabet book, using Trajan letters and uncials and doing some calligraphy. So I thought, okay, I could come up with an idea of an imagined children's book, a page from an imagined children's book, and that's where it came, the letter T. And of course, I think most of the people in the project probably did something relating to the Trump administration, and what else could you do? So what can I do with a T? And then I started thinking, okay, tweet. It starts with a T too, and then I decided to use the Twitter birdie, the little blue bird of Twitter. And I thought it'd be cool to have him perch on top of the T and doing how birds do. And then we needed lowercase too, so I thought, oh, Don Jr. down there in the bottom of the T, going spewing his little tweet stuff. And of course, just to emphasize that that's what that was meant to be. It had little flies buzzing around. So that's where it came from. Two plates, two linoleum cut plates. And the first one was, of course, just first I cut out the blacks. This is a proof without the gold there. So first I cut out the black area, and then I transferred that to another plate so I know where to put the birds later. Then I went back to the black plate. Before I had cut out the center of the T, originally this was all solid, I inked very carefully the T, the big T itself, with the gold, printed the addition with that, then cut the gold area out, and then reprinted the edition with just the sepia color. And then to do the blue of the birds, I cut a separate plate, another piece just as big as that, with everything cut away except for the little birdies, and just inked them very carefully and printed them in, and that's it.
So David, I'm going to ask you to unmute. There you go. So for you, David, do you ever use text? I mean, you work in woodblock anyway, but have you ever done text in woodblock before?
No. Actually, I was a little concerned when I found out what this project was to become, but I had signed up for it. So I figured I'd better go ahead with it and figure out something to do. I had a number of ideas. Actually, the very first idea I had was I had signed up for a course for the Rhode Island Makers Mill, which has a space in the same building I'm in. And I found out you could make prints using laser printing. You just very lightly, delicately singe an image onto a piece of paper. And I thought, what could be better for a hot type than that? But it was just way too much software and hardware stuff. So, that I got rid of that idea pretty quickly. But no, the last time I had done anything with letter forms was the impetus for this project, which is something I did at Pratt in 1965 as a freshman, just doing my Abecedarian handbook of just silk screened letter forms and yeah, just
So that book that you were holding at the beginning, that's something you made when you were in college.
That's the one thing I've left over from my my freshman year at Pratt. Yes.
Wow, that's very cool. Something to revisit. That's fun. My other question that I was just thinking of 1 second ago was with Lisa, we were talking about having X number of sheets and versus what you realize at the end, between, mistakes or things you're not happy with. What is that like for you? How many prints do you start out with versus how many complete prints are you able to make?
This particular project, I probably did almost 40, and mainly it was because of the stupid bird. because it's such a tiny thing, and to ink and to get the pressure of the press just right so it didn't kind of smear and get fuzzy. So I had to make a lot of extra ones just so the bird was more or less crisp.
Did you feel that the idea of text came to you pretty quickly, or did you test out other ideas first?
I tested out a lot of ideas. When I was doing my morning walk, I'd often look at manhole covers and water shut-off valves and things, and I thought, maybe I could just do a bunch of monotypes, just inking up things in the street and and then I thought I'd probably get run over by a bus. I had several ideas, but yeah.
And a question in the chat from Carolyn is, why did you end up going with lino cut?
I like lino cut because it is so direct. There's so many people that do amazing things with printmaking, but for me, the technology gets in the way of the art. I think I just need to, you make a cut in a linoleum plate or a wood block, and voila, you have something. But so many of those other processes are just so complicated, my mind just doesn't work that way, that I can come up with all these multiple steps to get from A to B.
Do you do any preparatory like sketching in advance, or do you work right into a plate, or what's that process like for you?
For this one, I did a number of sketches. A lot of them were just sort of like really bad political cartoon kind of things, until I came up with just the simple alphabet book idea.
Yeah, that's great. And then I'm trying to think of, well, my other question would be, you're also a painter, but how long have you been printmaking for, and what are sort of the differences between these two things for you personally?
Well, they're absolutely different. Painting, you can make changes, and every minute, every brush stroke, you can change your mind and brush something out and put something else in. The thing I enjoy about printmaking is that once you have a drawing and you transfer it to your block and you start cutting, you're pretty much on the way to an end piece. And it's kind of, it's kind of a Zen thing. It just sort of sit and zone out and just cut away and not worry about changing things. I know, it's just an absolutely different process. Yeah. After a while, I get sick of painting, and I do some wood cuts and lino cuts until I miss the spontaneity of that, and then I'll come back to painting again. That's
great. And for you, the same question I asked Lisa, what was your favorite part of working on this project?
Finishing it.
That's going to be everyone's answer. My favorite part was handing over the prints.
Right.
Well, that's great. Thank you. So if anyone else has any questions that are specific to David's portion of the video, you can put those in the chat, like I said, at any time, and we'll do sort of a wrap-up question and answer with everyone at the end. And now I will share the last of the 4 videos, which features Betsy Zimmerman. Then we'll do questions with Betsy. And again, thank you to Ruth for putting together this great series of videos for us.
One of the members of the print portfolio. This is the 4th portfolio that I've done here at the club, and it's always a learning process. This time I decided to use linoleum block printing as my technique, and I began to work with an image that just kept sort of spilling out of the framework that I had sort of thought about using. There's a printmaker whose work is up here at the club. She was a member of the club and she taught at RISD in the 1930s, Eliza Gardner. and I love her prints. But they have always been framed, or they usually are framed with a black line, and then the simplicity of the black line works within that framework. I titled my print At the Edge. This is one of the rejects, but this is what my print is. And I was thinking about how everything in life, and certainly the things that have to do with the motto that we worked on, are always pushing at the edges. The inspiration for this portfolio was the idea of things being the edges of life, of culture, being pushed beyond their supposed limits. So in a subtler way, that's what I chose to do. The linoleum process that I used was 2 blocks, and this one is the color. This one is the black line. And then the final thing that I did, I found a stamp that had illegible writing, and I decided to put that in back. So I cut, after I had put the two together, I would cut these edges out so that the print, when it was glued underneath, the calligraphy really, would show through the edges. So the printing happens on a registration. I ink this press, or this block, put it on the registration, and then my paper, I have a line at the top, and I tape the paper down, and with a baron, which I didn't bring along, I just rub the block on the paper. This is a Japanese mulberry type paper. It's a handmade paper. In this instance, this is another connection to the Providence Art Club because it's paper that came from Walter Feldman's studio after he passed away. And we were very fortunate to be able to take piles and piles of printmaking paper that was offered to us when they were cleaning out his studio. So after the color is printed and I let it dry, then I put black on this plate and went through the same process, taking the colored image and putting it back, following the registration that I had created for myself, and printing the black on top. And as you can see, because the paper is thin enough, it actually shows through the back a little bit too. So the finished piece went through all these stages. It took quite a while to just get to the place, lots of trial and error to get to the place where this would actually work.
So now, Betsy, I will ask you to unmute. There you go. Great. So one question, let's see. So the first question for Betsy is from Lisa, who said, Betsy, how many runs of color did you make to achieve the several tones of green that you got?
I did 2 runs with the basic green and the lavender. But then as I kept looking at them, I realized I really wanted to have a little more depth in them, so that I ended up doing the last darkening by hand. So, so at least 3 different elements in that.
That's great. And by hand, did you went in with like a brush and did it,
Yeah.
or with a, yeah.
Yeah.
And then
But I
another,
used printmaking ink to
yes.
paint.
And the second question is from Carolyn in the chat, who said, did you use a press at all, or did you just use a Baron?
Just a Baron.
And
A lot of this happened last winter. I have a press of my own, but I really like the idea of not using a press because of the time and place we were in. And I'm finding more and more that combining those different techniques is really fascinating. It's fun.
do you feel that it's more difficult to do it with just the Baron, or are there sort of pluses and minuses to both ways of printing?
The second, the thing that's interesting is how much ink you need. And that depends on the pressure. It depends on the paper. The lightweight paper that we got from Walter Feldman was really very, it looked like paper that had been used for woodcuts with his students or lino cuts. And it really was very absorbent. And as you saw, you could see things through on the back. So that really gave it a nice level. And I think the other thing that was interesting about it was just beginning to think about how you actually put the pressure on, because as I used the Baron, doing so many pieces, you just really began to say, oh, does this need to be this heavy? And you could go back. The interesting thing with using a Baron is you can go back and peek a little bit as you're rubbing it, and you really get the amount of pressure that you want.
Interesting. Were you able to get your entire edition with all paper that had come from Walter Feldman, or did you have to sort of intersperse it with paper that you purchased, or?
No, there was enough.
There's
There's
plenty of Walter Feldman paper. That's
yeah,
very cool. That's a very neat connection.
huge, huge sheets.
And then another question from Lisa in the chat is, how hard was it to cut your 2 blocks down so that you had areas for the leaves to extend through?
Oh, that was terrible. That was the worst part, I think.
Had you done something like that before, where you had things sort of breaking the edge and using blocks in that way?
No, I mean, as far as cutting the blocks to fit together that way, that was the first time I had done that. And I'm not sure I would have done it if I had realized just how hard that was going to be. But in the end, it worked out. And it was interesting. It was wonderful to see the registration techniques that different people use, because I found, because I had these little pieces sticking out on the edges, I had to kind of figure out a registration technique that allowed for them, as I was trying to line everything up.
That's great. Another question in the chat is from Alana, who said, what type of linoleum did you use?
I've discovered that McLean's has a wonderful They call it a student grade. It's called Gobushan, and it's a lighter, easier carving linoleum, and you can get fairly large plates that you can cut down to any size you want.
Great. And then a similar question for you that I asked David and Lisa is, how many of your, in the process of making your edition, how many did you mess up?
Oh, plenty. I think I'm probably closer to Lisa's 50, but somewhere between David and Lisa, 30 to 50. Yeah, you definitely need 30 to 35, and then it became 40, and I kept cutting a few more pieces of paper as I went. Yeah.
And what aspect was challenging you the most? Was it the registration, or the coloring, or the cutting through the image for the text, or?
I don't know about most challenging, because each of them had different challenges. So that's always the interesting part of it that's fun. I think the part I liked the best was when you finally get this stack of prints that are finished and you say, okay, which are the best ones? And you keep going through them and going through them. And each time you look at them, oh, this one, no, this one, oh. At least that's what happens with me. As I've done different portfolios, I've found there's always a little place that you never expected. And when you go back and look at it, oh, there's a spot. I mean, I'm not the neatest person when I print, so that's part of it.
That's great. Thank you, Betsy. Awesome. So for the last couple minutes, let me unmute David and unmute Lisa. So you should both be able to unmute it. Perfect. So does anyone have any questions that you'd like to ask of all three printmakers who are available here? Or any questions about the portfolio in general that these three printmakers may be able to answer? If so, you can put them in the chat and I can ask them for you if you like. Like I said, the portfolio is up in Dodge House Gallery. We're open through July 16th. We are open Sundays through Fridays from 12 to 4 p.m. each day. And then I know many of the printmakers who are in the portfolio are going to be there this Sunday from 2 to 4 for our little reception that we're doing to accompany this exhibition. So I do hope you'll come see it in person. It's a really, really wonderful exhibition. And we have one of the portfolio boxes, the number 2 out of 28 there on view in the gallery as well, so that you can see the portfolio, how it's prepared. You can see all the prints that are in it. And like I said, the auction will be up through the 16th as well. So you can bid online at any time. Both members and non-members are welcome to bid. And it's pretty easy to use, but if you have any problems using that platform or anything, you can always call me and I can help you with it. And then you can also explore the whole portfolio on the Hot Type website. So I guess if no one has any other questions, I will ask one question for each of you to answer. And it is, now that you have gotten through this enormous project, which has been in the works for 3 years, 4 years. I mean, we've been, my sense of time is totally ruined now because of the last year, but you know, you've all been working on this and talking about it for so long, and obviously Carol has been such an enormous force in putting this together, and what a nice collaboration this has been between so many art club members. But now that you're done with it, for each of you, what is your next printmaking venture going to be, do you think? So why don't we start with Lisa and then David and then Betsy on that question?
Well, I am part of a printmakers group in Southern New England, and we have an exhibit coming up at the Mark Twain House Museum in February next year, and it runs for 9 months. And our goal there is to take Mark Twain's words. We could pick anything we wanted. We just have to make sure it's accurate, to create a piece or pieces for their big gallery there. And so I decided to focus on Huck Finn's aha moment, where he has to decide whether to turn in Jim, the runaway slave, which is what he was taught. He was taught that that was what people did, versus his conscience, which made him realize how important Jim was to him. He was really a father figure. He stood watch for him at night and all these nice things. And so as I was wrestling with how to put this project together for that, I realized that all of the Black Lives Matter issues, and particularly George Floyd's death, were weighing heavily on my mind. And I realized how nicely the two segued. So I'm making a log cabin quilt, paper quilt, with images from Huck Finn, as well as images of some of the African Americans who have been murdered and killed by police. So that's my big project.
Wow, thank you for telling us about that. And then for you, David?
Well, I don't have anything specific planned. I know when I paint, I never sketch per se before I paint. I do all my sketching on the canvas, and a lot of it gets wiped out. And then when it gets painted, it becomes much more, I don't want to say sterile, but much less spontaneous than the original drawing. But I photographed some of those original sketches on canvas, and some of them I think would make interesting kind of rough, almost crude kind of woodcuts. So I have a couple of those in mind that just I like the basic, almost a crude, primitive quality of woodcuts and lino cuts. So that's what I'm going to work on.
Excellent, great. And for you, Betsy, what's your next printmaking project?
Well, I am part of the same group as Lisa, so that is definitely what's top of my radar right now. We had gone to visit the Mark Twain house, and there was an exhibit up. Oh, this is what, 2 years ago, maybe 3 years ago, Lisa. I don't remember. COVID sort of interrupts the time span. But one of the things in the show that was there was was a quote from him about his love of cats. And I immediately just resonated with that, because I have always had cats in my life. And the whole idea of rescuing animals and really taking care of the animals that get forgotten has been an important part of my life. So that's my cats are gonna be my focus for maybe lino cuts, maybe just monotypes, not just, but maybe monotypes. I'm still sort of playing with how things will go together for that.
Excellent. That sounds great. Well, thank you to all three of you, to David, Lisa, and Betsy, for joining us to talk about this. Thank you to Ruth for putting together these great videos, interviews with everybody so that we could see these. And of course, thank you to Carol for all the work that she's done making this project a reality over all these years that you guys have all been working together on this, and to bring the exhibition together. And to everyone who, so many of you here have contributed in different ways to making this project a possibility. So thank you all for all the work that you've done on it. The one other question in the chat is, Betsy, if you could email me. Oh, okay, Lisa got her, put it in. Thank you, Lisa. So Lisa put the correct spelling of McLean's in the chat for you, Karen. There you go. Excellent. So I will make this video available. It will be on our YouTube. So if you want to come back and watch these videos again, you can do that. You'll be able to see them there. And I will also. We also have access to the original videos that Ruth made if you'd like to see those individually as well. I hope that you'll come and see the exhibition at the Art Club. We would love to see you there. But I thank you all for being with us tonight, and thank you for this great conversation and learning more about this great project. So thank you, everyone. Have a nice night.
Okay, thank you, Michael.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Bye.